gems. I am Janita Pascal, your inspirational mindset shifter and the founder and managing director of G.P.A Inc., where we inspire intellectual innovation. Today, I'm happy that you could join us here as my guest, Laura, who is an energy healer and mindset coach, take you behind the win, where we go beyond her cover story. Behind the win are experiences and or challenges that we all encounter. Those dreams and visions that we set out to achieve can be greeted by many stumbling blocks, and those very stumbling blocks can leave us questioning why, or often they allow us to go back to the drawing board to determine where should we turn next and how should we take those next steps. But truly, nobody knows, as all they ever get to see is that cover story. That cover story that leaves others questioning, why can't I get there too? Here we speak to doctors, authors, lawyers, professional coaches, entrepreneurs, your everyday people, and many more as they inspire you by sharing with you the experiences and or the challenges that they encountered before basking in their winning season. Again, I want to thank you so much for joining us here today as my guest Laura shares on the topic overcoming trauma, life conditioning, and the limiting beliefs attached. This is a power packed topic, and I just again want to welcome Laura to this platform as she come on here again today to share and inspire with you, our audience.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Laura.
Pleasure to be here. It really is. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, Laura, for joining us. Once we open up this podcast and we begin the interview, we like to lighten it up a bit. So if I were going along my merry way and I happened to get stuck in an elevator with you and we had the opportunity to introduce ourselves to each other, who would you tell me Laura is and what is she best known for?
Okay. I'm going to tell you straight off what my values are. So Laura's values are: first, I am true source love. 2, I am joyful inspiration. And 3, I am heartfelt gratitude. And those are the 3 values that I get up and remind myself every day of. And those are the things you can rely on me to be because I say so.
I never thought of it from that angle. You often, when you think of introducing yourself, you start to introduce yourself as perhaps I am Janita, a business administrator. You never tend to use that type of angle. So I really like your approach in that of how you would introduce yourself. And again, you spoke about being grateful and showing gratitude. And I think that's very important along our transformational journey. I think sometimes we forget the importance of gratitude along that journey.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, gratitude is a natural state for us to be in. And when we are in an aligned state, gratitude, joy, inspiration, love, compassion, all of these higher vibrational emotions become a natural state for us. We only feel the misalignment when we are listening too much to the voice of the ego that requires the fear and the negative emotional beliefs in order to live. So the ego attaches that onto us. And through no fault of our own, we adopt these beliefs as we grow up over time.
And sometimes, these beliefs can be adopted due to our childhood experiences. And as we get into the topic, I was doing some research based on the topic that you submitted, and I realized that research indicates that over 70% of people in a lifetime will experience a traumatic event, and often trauma can spiral into PTSD if it's not addressed.
Absolutely.
Can you share with us more about your childhood experiences and what shaped your mindset and the reality you conceptualized about yourself?
Okay, yeah. I'm going to start off by saying that everyone has emotional trauma blocks. You know, often we think of trauma as these big things, which yes, they absolutely can be. But I always like to say we come into life back to front. We're born and we have no way of filtering through the information and the experiences that are given to us. So we end up adopting the beliefs of our parents, our siblings, other family members, society. So straight off the bat, we're up against it because we're being dominated and fed all of this information, none of which is actually ours. So I grew up in a really good home. You know, I would say we were kind of like upper working class. My dad worked offshore. He was in the oil rigs. I had two older twin brothers. They're 7 years older than I am. And unfortunately, my mum, she had an alcohol problem. So she would drink when my dad was away. Then she'd, you know, sober up when he came home. And this was a repeating cycle for as long as I can remember. And she wasn't, you know, she wasn't a very happy drunk because she herself had had emotional trauma. But then there was no one to speak to. You know, she's never opened up about it fully. Alcohol became her coping mechanism. And of course, that impacted us as children. I had a lot of anger and rage towards her, especially in my teenage years, because I couldn't understand why the love of her family wasn't enough to try. I saw it very black and white as a teenager and thought, you're being offered help. There's avenues here for help, but you don't want to take that help. And that caused a lot of frustration in me. It wasn't until I became older that I realized this started conditioning in me of unworthiness. I believed I wasn't fully worthy of her love because the alcohol would always win. But it took a long time for me to piece that together. And I was a very confident and outgoing kid. So I didn't really think for 2 seconds that I did have any unworthiness issues. But then at the age of, well, as a teenager, I wanted to be out the house as much as possible, especially when my dad was not at home, because it wasn't a very nurturing environment to be in. And because my brothers were 7 years older, they had left to go to university when I started secondary school. So it was just me and mum, you know, while dad was away. I then got in with crowds, people that were a lot older than I was. I looked and appeared much older. So that allowed me to run with the big kids. And I did the things that the big kids were doing. So like at 14, I was smoking weed. 15, it was ecstasy and coke. And by 16, it was heroin. And then I ended up in an abusive relationship with someone who was 12 years older than I was, who was also a heroin dealer. That then, 2 years that lasted, I came out of that. I healed very quick and I got over it, but without the inner healing, there was still a lot of fear and unworthiness still unknown to me that was shaping my beliefs and shaping really the reality that my life was taking on. I went to study beauty and complementary therapy at college. I then went to work at Skibo Castle and managed the spa there. So like I was, you know, very high functioning, very high achieving. That part had always been in me. But I was never addressing these underlying emotional traumas that had been seeded during childhood.
And you will guide us through that a little later in terms of the importance of addressing our childhood experiences. But I want to go back to something you said earlier. You spoke about the importance of support and seeking support earlier on, especially not only with our generation, but also with our parents and generations to come.
Yeah.
And I think that is important, as life experiences can have a ripple effect, especially if we do not have that guidance and support. And with the absence of that guidance and support, various behavioral patterns can manifest, and we all respond differently,
Yes.
whether positively or negatively, given the circumstance. Hence, that is why I believe that sometimes we should never judge someone based on their experience, because perhaps in the moment, this is all they know and this is all they could have done. And I also believe we can do better, but sometimes doing better is leaning into support and leaning into those who may know better. And sometimes that in the time of the circumstance or the experience, you don't really have that. So do you believe that experiences or decisions for you would have taken a different turn if you had the expert guidance earlier on? And how important would you say support and guidance is along one's journey?
They would have absolutely made a difference, had I had that earlier on. Had my mum had support, she may never, maybe she would have never have then leaned so much on alcohol. And then, so it's once negative momentum, once these beliefs are formed, they start snowballing. Had I had a different outlook, or had I had someone telling me what I am now able to tell my clients, my children, yes, it would have been completely different. I mean, I did have a very strong father figure. He was, my hero, very diplomatic, very assured, very humble. And when I overcame my heroin addiction, I put that down to, because although I had inherited some of my mum's weaknesses with the addiction, and also, some of her limiting beliefs around worthiness, I had his strength. So I was able to overcome a very serious addiction. And I could see I was able to do that because of his strengths. She wasn't able to do that because she never had that in her home environment. We're going back generations now. It was a completely different way of living. It was, you just got on with it, put on a brave face and go on. But I mean, had my environment been different, then it probably wouldn't have taken the same route. But I will say, had life not led me down that path, I wouldn't be here doing what I do now to help others. So yes, it definitely would make a difference. It is making a difference now. The healing I have done on myself has helped to heal the generational conditioning that has came from my mum. And I now know that unworthiness issues that she felt, it ended with me. It will now not be passed down through the generational lines. So, and hopefully, because there's so many people like us now in the world, shedding light, offering platforms to speak on, offering the support, I really do hope that future generations are going to have a lot brighter future, where they don't have to do as much healing when they get into adulthood as what we maybe have had to do just now.
Oh, I told you guys this is a power-packed interview, and I'm just learning so much here from Laura. And in Laura's application, she indicated that, and earlier on in the interview as well, she alluded to being in a relationship. And I know sometimes that when you experience some of those encounters in life, sometimes we align or we create that alignment to individuals who may not necessarily be the best for us. And again, based on our vulnerabilities, and we're just seeking that love and external validation, we tend to latch on to some individuals. And I have done it in my own experiences, especially due to some of the traumas that I have experienced. And sometimes one can experience narcissistic abuse without even knowing, because they tend to align and form these relationships due to their vulnerabilities. And studies show that at least 25% of individuals, due to this, have experienced some type of narcissistic abuse. And in that relationship, they are criticized, belittled, and sometimes they don't even know the signs. They just believe that, oh, this is the person that loved me. This is the person that was there to support me in that time. And that's why recognizing those characteristics of those in your support system is very key and essential. And Laura, can you tell us what are some of the signs someone in a narcissistic relationship can recognize earlier on to know that they are in a narcissistic relationship?
For me, that first relationship, that obviously was narcissistic, but I knew I shouldn't have been getting into that relationship, even at that young age. But I was very young, and looking back now, I can see I was just looking for someone to show me love and attention. And because it was someone older and I was younger, that made me, oh, they're noticing me, you know. So that one was, that one had alarm bells and red flags all over it from the start. My next long-term relationship I got into, and I thought that one was safe. He was already like a best friend. And because I'd been so hurt in the past, I thought, I'm going to try this because he won't hurt me. But unbeknown to me, he had all of his unworthiness issues and inner doubt and lack and fear. And I was now getting my fire back when I entered into this relationship. And it was there for a while, but I now see that fire was then highlighting more of his insecurities. So it started off with things like he would belittle the music that I like to listen to. So we would just end up listening to what he liked. And then I remember one time us having a fire outside. It was a big fire and we were getting rid of stuff, you know, from the house. And it was like, I think you should burn some of your old photos and stuff. It's just not related to you anymore. And I remember at the time thinking, why would anybody ask to do that? It wasn't like it was photos of an ex-boyfriend or anything. This was just photos from my life. But like you said at the beginning of this question, sometimes we just look at it and think, you're the person that loves me and you're not doing anything to hurt me. So there was always this, although I questioned things, I would land back on in my own mind, but you're safe because you're not like how he was. There was no physical abuse in this relationship. So that made me bypass my gut feeling that was coming up, because then it would always be, but I love you so much. I love you so much. And it was always when you started to question something that it would change. It would get turned around. No, you're overthinking. I just think that this would be really good for you. So I would say some of the first signs is having your own identity slowly stripped away from you, but it being done in a roundabout way that makes you think there's nothing wrong with it. That's definitely a big one, because narcissists they're crafty manipulators. So it's never it never screams out.
True.
You know, it's like a niggling doubt. And if you address it, they have 1,000,001 ways to shut that down and have you believe you're overthinking. And I think the reason that I bypassed my inner gut so much is because I had created the belief in the beginning, you're safe, you won't hurt me.
Right.
And that was purely created because I hadn't done the proper inner healing. I'd healed on a physical level. I'd been to college. I had an amazing qualification. I was now running a spa in the world, one of the world's most prestigious private members club. So it was, yeah, I thought I was back, but I hadn't actually went in and done that inner healing of the fear and the unworthiness. I hadn't addressed them. So the pattern was still there, although it started to form in another way. Has that answered that for you okay?
Oh, yes, you answered perfectly well. And I thought you were speaking about my story here. I really thought you were speaking about my story here. And even when I saw those signs, I continued to believe that it was love and that this individual wanted the best for me. And again, I had not healed. You spoke about inner healing. I didn't, well, as you're speaking to me now, I realized that in this period, though I thought that I had done the work, I had gone to therapy, I was really not healed in that period. And I'm just so grateful again that experts like yourself can come on here and share with us and enlighten us and just put a stamp on it and say, hey, this is what you were experiencing. Because sometimes we truly don't know. And that is why it is so difficult for us to put an end to those types of relationships. So, what led you to put an end to that relationship? And after you left, how did you feel?
It was getting too much. There was some nights we'd be sat in our living room and he'd been drinking too much, and he would literally be sat there with headphones on listening to music, and I was sat next to him, and hours would go by, nothing would be said, and I would just be like, this isn't right, this isn't. And then as this awareness of this just isn't right, nothing about this is right, I then probably went through a period of about 2 months where every morning I would waken up and within seconds I would burst into tears because the heaviness of my reality and how lost I was starting to realize that I'd lost myself, and I was more lost then than when I was a heroin addict. And that hit home, because it was like, wow, I've been a really bad heroin addict. I've lost everything. How can I be worse off now? So that was the beginning of the end. And I remember waking up and I was crying and I said, I can't take this anymore. And he went, well, I can't take any more of your fucking crying. And it was just like, wow. So that was the beginning of the end. But I was something inside me said, I'm not moving out. I need him to move out. And this was when I first started practicing law of attraction. And I thought, right. I remember watching The Secret, and Bob Proctor came on the screen. And as he stared down the camera lens into my soul, he stated, everything in your life you have created, the good and the bad. And that awakened me to the realization that I was in fact to blame. Not to blame, but I was responsible for the mess I was in. But instead of shame and guilt, I felt a sense of empowerment. And I decided, if I've created this world of crap, basically, unknowing, then wow, what could I create on purpose? So in that moment, I made a decision to focus purely on joy, love, and gratitude, to embody them. So it was kind of like a test to the universe as well. If I embody this and I become this, then everything that isn't a match to that should fall away. Well, within about a month or so, it wasn't long, boyfriend moved out and completely away from the area. And it was his idea. Well, so he thought. I was aware I was manifesting this, but he thought, right, that's it, I'm moving out. And it was just like, thank you. The day he moved out, I was painting the walls before he left, because I was so ready and I knew I had to make my environment mine. So I did what I could do. I took down the pictures that I'd looked at while he was there. I gave everywhere a lick of paint, freshened it up, hung up some new pictures, and that was the beginning. And I remember feeling unstoppable. It was like, right, this is it. This is the beginning of the rest of my life. And it certainly has been.
Definitely, that right here was very powerful. And for those individuals who over time, given the challenge, develop those limiting beliefs due to the challenges or experiences, you spoke about earlier the importance of inner healing. What can they integrate into their day-to-day to ensure that they remain resilient and inspired to accomplish their goals, or allow those things, these positive things that they wish for themselves, to manifest?
Okay. To stay resilient, we really need to be focused. So whatever the goal is, have it written down. Because a goal that isn't written down is simply, it's a dream. And the majority of dreams for people don't come true. So start by having your new goal. Even I remember when I heard Bob saying that, I remember thinking, right, I'm committing to this. If all I get from this is to feel more positive each day, that's a jackpot win. That's all I wanted in the beginning, because I was so drained, so lost, of feeling so low and down every morning when I got up. So even if that first goal is, I want to feel happy, write it down. And every morning before you start your day, visit that goal and embody the emotional state of it. It's important to embody the emotional state. We have two parts of our mind. We have the conscious and the subconscious. All of our limiting beliefs, all of our paradigms, which are our accumulation of daily habits that make up 80 to 90% of our day, they are all stored in the subconscious mind. And nothing gets through the gatekeeper of that subconscious mind on a conscious level. So we need to address the emotional state to make an impact. So begin every day by focusing on that goal and the emotional state that you want to get in. Embody it. Then as you go throughout your day and you find, oh, my head's taking me somewhere negative, as soon as you realize that, shut it down, reinforce your focal point again, your goal, and move back into the emotional state, embody that emotional state again. And in the beginning, it will feel like you're doing this 1,000,000 times a day. But repetition consistent repetition is one way to then rewire the beliefs in the subconscious mind.
I feel like today I'm in a masterclass. I don't feel like this is a podcast at all. And earlier we introduced you, and in your introduction, Laura is an energy healer and mindset coach, and I'm feeling the energy here today, and my mindset is shifting for the better. And I just want you to walk us through the work that you're doing, the products and services that you offer, and whom those products and services were created for.
Okay. So I combine energy healing with mindset coaching because I have a firm belief, well, and this stems from my own experience. Mindset alone often isn't enough to make long-lasting changes. And that's because all of our limiting beliefs were created because of a negative emotional experience. So to understand the root cause of the limiting beliefs, we need to understand why and when they were seeded and what emotional experience led to that. So when I first got into energy healing, well, I was already aware of the chakra system. I'd been using it in reflexology. It was showing up in different massage work and stuff that I was doing. So once I started studying Reiki and crystal healing and other non-physical energy modalities, the chakra system just kept coming back. And it's an internal map. Each chakra relates to a specific area in life. Each one connects to a specific endocrine gland, which then has specific hormone release. It's all related to our central nervous system. It just made so much sense. And it was like this map. It was like a map I could follow to reverse engineer my life. I could relate where fear showed up. And then I could begin to question, okay, where did fear first show up for me? What kind of things was I scared of as a child? How did that then lead on to certain beliefs being created? Like, for example, when I was young, my brothers used to tease me about Sammy the spider. And they actually used to put gloves and stuff at the bottom of my bed. So when I put my feet down, I'd touch them at night. And I remember my dad running through and screaming because I was screaming. And this led me to have a very deep-rooted fear of insects, not just spiders, other insects. I then overcame that fear once I became a mum properly, because it was like, wait a minute, this isn't actually mine. This was something I was forced to believe because of negative experiences. And then other things of fear were then allowed to build on top of that. There was also an underlying fear that had stemmed because of my mum's drinking. So again, peeling it back layer at a time, it allowed me to see where I began these and then how I was placing other experiences on top, reaffirming the negative belief. So that's how I started to use the chakra system, and that's now how I use it in my one-on-one coaching. I also have an online self-study program called Beginner's Guide to Chakras, which is video courses, and then there's guided meditations and worksheets that allow people to start questioning their own experience to begin stripping away the layers. And then in the worksheets, there's different modalities and techniques that they can begin to use on themselves as well. I also run different masterminds and stuff from time to time. And I have a group coaching program that I run twice a year called Chakra Connections, which is more in depth than the online. So primarily, I work with a lot of high achieving women who have hit a stage in life. They're like, right, what's going on? There's more to life. Or they may have hit a stage, they've just divorced. Their kids have left home. Something's happened that has led them to go, I don't know who I am anymore. Or they've realized they've been sacrificing half of their life for things that aren't in alignment with who they want to be. And that being said, that's my kind of niche market. But to be fair, anyone who is looking to create more emotional intelligence and become the master of their energy, to align. For me, we all have one purpose in life. It's to align with true source love. It's to align with God within. And when we make that our purpose, everything else then falls into place from that. So I don't like to limit my services just by saying, I'm not there. But majority, it's more high achieving women that seem to seek me out. But yes, services are open to anyone who's seeking to become the master of their own energy alignment, take control of their mindset, and become the highest version of themselves.
If I were you, I would reach out to Laura and tap into her services. And Laura, if someone wanted to reach out to you, how could they connect, and how and where can they find you?
Okay, I'm on Facebook, Laura Morrice, the Chakra Coach. I have Instagram accounts, which is Laura J. Morrice. I have just started up a YouTube channel. So hoping to get more informational content out on that channel as well as guided meditation, some tapping videos. They can also find me on my website, lauramorris.com. And if you want to reach out directly, you can email me at laura@lauramorris.com.
Nice. So guys, I know that you were inspired here today. I know that Laura shared with us a few pearls of wisdom, a few nuggets that we could all take away from today's experience. And talking about the takeaways, today's takeaway for me was the importance of remaining inspired along your journey. I know that we all encounter those challenges, but those challenges should never cripple or hinder our ability to take center stage and accomplish those things that we set out for ourselves. And as we do so, we must be grateful and we must find joy along our journey. Again, Laura, I want to thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you. It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you again.